When I say the phrase Pareto distribution in comic book values, I predict that 80% of you will have no interest whatsoever. 20% will be interested. Of that 20%, I imagine that 80% will give me about the next 10 seconds to make my point, while 20% of the 20%, or 4% of you, will actually be calculating that roughly 4% of all comics ever published will become keys and hold more value than their counterparts. What am I talking about? Well, let's get started on Pareto distribution in comic book values. For those of you nervous around mathematics, there's no need to be. The Pareto Principle, as demonstrated by Vilfredo Pareto a long time ago, he noticed that in Italy, 20% of the population owned 80% of the land. It's basically like a rich get richer sort of observation, right? So you'll see this today in, let's say, professional athletes. So of all professional athletes, 20% do really well, right? Like 20% earn 80% of the total revenue. Of that 20%, 20% of that earn 80% of the entire revenue. So it's about 2/3. You'll see it all the time, and so like the top 1%, for example, controls half the wealth in America and whatnot, right? So you can also apply it to comic books. Basically, most comic books ever produced really don't hold value, or their value is basically sucked up by what we consider keys, right? So I was looking at Future State, and I still say far and away the big star of Future State is that Wonder Woman #1, first full appearance Yara Flor. This is what I said on February 5th, 4 months ago, and this is what I'm sticking with. The only one, or actually there's two, the next Batman was considered to be a big one, but it really hasn't gone up in value, hasn't seen the appreciation. Again, not first appearance of Jace. The other book to be considered is Teen Titans #1. With Red X, not his first appearance in comics. That was Teen Titans Go #23. But Red X still has some pretty good value. It's basically in a fight for dominance with Future State Wonder Woman #1, first full appearance of Yara Flor. So this is where I'm going to have to bring up a spreadsheet, and we're going to show you how the value of the many gets sucked up by the value of the very few to become key issues. Okay. So we often forget how big Future State was. Basically, you're looking at 54 issues over 26 different titles. I'm not looking at variants. I'm not going into dealer incentives. These are just your cover A's. I'm assuming the value is about $5.99 per book when it came out. So 54 issues at roughly $5.99 a piece gives us a total value of $323.46. Meaning if I had went out and bought a single issue of every Future State cover A, I would have been dropping about $325. Of those 54 issues, if we use Pareto, the top 20%, which in this case would equal to be almost 11 comics, 10.8, would command 80% of the value. So you'd literally have 11 books worth about $258, let's say. The other 43 books would only be worth 20% of the total value, or 161, for an average of about $3.74. These are your dollar bin books, and a lot of them will be $1. There'll probably be some $2, some $3, some $4. But here's the great part. So we take the top 20%, those 11 books that seem to have an appreciating value, and I would say there'd probably be like Future State Wonder Woman 1 and 2, Future State Teen Titans 1 and 2, the Superman House of L had some speculation. Also, Future State The Next Batman had some speculation there. So let's say those are 10 or 11 books. Of those, 20% of them, which is basically 2 books, are going to command 80% of the total value. And this doesn't happen right away. This happens over time, right? So 80% of $258.77 is about $207. So which means you're going to have technically 2 books that could be worth around $95, $96, and the rest drop down to basically cover price, $5.99. So by Pareto, once leadership is established here in the hierarchy of comic book value, you're going to have probably 1 or 2 very expensive books in the $100 range. My guess right now, I'm going to come out and say it, Future State Wonder Woman #1, Year of Floor, will be the book. Teen Titans #1 could be. Now, Future State was a very small sample size. So what happens when we increase the sample size to, let's say, 100 million comics, with the average asking price of $5.99 a piece, for a total value of $599 million, and we apply that 80-20 rule? Well, this is pretty cool, because as we just keep going down, you have different tiers of value. Like basically like 80 million of those comics are an average value of $3.74. Basically your dollar bin ones, and not really worth a lot, at least financially. Let me rephrase that. I have certain dollar books that I love. Even though they're basically worthless, I still like them a lot. That just because they're not worth a lot of money doesn't mean they're worthless. All right, with that out of the way, as we keep going down, you can see like maybe there's 4 million books in tier #1 worth about $100 average, and 16 million worth an average of $6, like cover price or better, or a little lower. As we keep drilling down, finally we get all the way down to the bottom, like the tier 8 books, where out of 100 million comics, the top 51 might be worth on average 1.5 million. The rest of the 205 in that tier are still going to be $100,000 books. That's basically what's happening now. As inflation happens, so even if you have small increases in the price of a book, your top valued books are going to go insane. Like if I change that $5.99 to a $6.99, you'll see that all of a sudden the top tier, 8 books, tier 8, jumps to 1.8 million and 114. So even though the number of books has not increased, their value has. So Pareto, especially for those top books, are very affected by inflation to an amazing degree, whereas the bottom books really aren't. Because again, if I increase $6.99 on even the tier 1 books, let's say, they go up by $1, right? Whereas the other books, they went from up to $114,000 because the average price of a comic jumped by $1 from like 98. So you can see where inflation drastically affects your ultra high valuable keys. So that's kind of a discovery for me. That's kind of cool. But I want to leave you guys with me acting like a little schoolgirl when I got a certain comic. So there you go. Speaking of my high value keys, and my high value keys are about $100 because that's as much as I ever want to spend. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. Sorry to bore you guys with math, but I thought it was very educational. So there you go. You learned a little something today. Talk to you next time. Okay, bye-bye. Grail acquired. Catwoman 51. Beautiful Adam Hughes cover. I'll put up the listings, the ones that recently sold. You'll see mine for, I got it for $126.54 Canadian, which means this is the most expensive comic I've ever bought. It's not graded. It's not even open from the seller yet. I did open the box because I wanted to show my wife what I got for $126. We got to justify these things, you know. So I'm going to open the hard mylar. Now, the seller had this as a 9. I really haven't looked at it very well, but I mean, there's no dings and the corners seem sharp. There is like a little bit of a, you won't be able to see it here, but a little bit of a roll on this, but nothing that a press can't take out. I'm just going to open it. Have a look at the front and the back. I actually don't like handling these things anymore. If I want to read it, I can read it online. But yeah, I think that's a 9.0 described by the seller. No issue with that grade. Probably underestimated it, but you'll find a lot of sellers with high scores, like trusted sellers. They tend to undergrade as opposed to overpromise, just to save their rating on eBay. But again, I think a press would do that issue lovely. Happy to get it. And until next time, I'll leave you with a lovely visage of an Adam Hughes, Selena Kyle, Catwoman 51, a work of art. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Bye for now.